A set of stairs that led from the first floor all the way to the attic in a lengthy switchback was located behind the open entrances to the mudroom and the parlor. Like everything else in the McGuire home, the stairs appeared to be supported only by pure willpower. A broad swath of dried blood could be seen extending down the right side of the stairs in a continuous line from top to bottom. Sheriff Lutz's initial reaction was that he wished he lived in a bigger city with greater resources at that precise moment. The three guys inside the McGuire home might be surrounded by support in less than an hour if they were located further north, close to Des Moines or Cedar Rapids. At the homestead, a small fleet of detectives, forensic specialists, photographers, evidence baggers, and rubberneckers would congregate. High-powered flashes and flashlights powered by batteries would fight against the night's encroaching darkness in August. Whatever tragedies had befallen the McGuire family would be shown as simply another crime scene under their hard gaze and comforted by the authorities' collective chatter, which was nonetheless awful but tolerable in the mind. A reasonable series of events. Unfortunately, his small, sparsely populated corner of eastern Iowa lacked the necessary infrastructure to conduct a thorough investigation into a possible crime. Even as Lutz detested the thought, he would have to climb those steps, and it would have to be right now. Clarkson would also have to go up there because it was against department policy for an officer to enter a possible crime scene by themselves. Additionally, he desired Clarkson's constant support while holding the Winchester. That did not imply that everyone must go. Without looking around, Lutz replied, "Billy, if you don't want to go up there again, now is your opportunity. Visit the porch and wait for us. Be on guard." Billy straightened his shoulders and sent Lutz a belligerent look. "With all due respect, sir, there is no way I am staying down here by myself." Lutz gave him a nod and returned to the issue of the stairs, saying, "Your choice, kid." They would have to watch out that their boots didn't contaminate the crime scene. The blood was heavy all the way down the steps before stopping suddenly on the next-to-last riser. Here, a little thicker puddle of blood still glistened beneath his flashlight with a subtle dampness. Whatever had occurred at this location recently. Now slow and steady wins the race. Lutz pushed his lanky figure to the top of the stairs and set a large boot on the first riser. Warning, don't step in it. The stair produced a wheezing sigh and a cloud of dust ascended, but it did not fall apart beneath his weight. Lutz started carefully making his way up the steps, first firmly testing each one for stability. He nodded for Clarkson to follow as the stairs groaned and creaked but held steady. Lutz could hear his normally reserved subordinate murmuring a number of prayers and profanities. The trail of blood went unbroken up the stairs. Now it took a sharp right turn and vanished into a lengthy corridor's shadows. The stench of filth and mold was overpowering, but there was also a strong coppery fragrance of new blood. A few framed pictures were displayed in random places, their subjects nearly entirely hidden by dust. Now that the dust on the floor had been disturbed, there were no clear trails to be seen because it had been swept nearly entirely away in several areas. Lutz felt his previous panic fade away as he became resigned to seeing things through. His focus was sharper, and his pulse was steady thanks to the adrenaline rushing through his body. Lutz cautiously avoided the open door to the first chamber as the passageway twice expanded to the right. A quick peek showed a dark bathroom, or maybe it was previously a restroom. It was now a pile of soiled and broken porcelain with a rusted pipe dangling carelessly in the place of what may have been a sink. The floor was mostly made of the same aged floorboards as the rest of the upstairs, with patches of torn linoleum covering it. Stale dirt and mildew odors permeated the air heavily. The blood trail continued down the passage to the second chamber, getting thicker as they moved further. Lutz ordered Billy to cover the toilet entrance before moving forward with Clarkson with his weapons primed. Lutz was the first to cautiously look around the corner of the room at the end of the hall, since he still had the maglite strapped to the top of his service weapon. Lutz genuinely heaved a sigh of relief when he first flashed his flashlight into the pitch-black space. He had anticipated discovering April McGuire and her children's remains scattered and mutilated over the floor. Instead, at first look, the room appeared to be completely empty. No limbs had been amputated and dressed in footy pajamas. There was also no evidence, such as furniture, drapes, rugs, or anything else, that anybody other than mice had ever lived there. Their waste was all over the plain hardwood floor, but there wasn't much else. He started moving his flashlight up and down. By the light of the lamp, the walls were painted a rich scarlet that appeared almost liquid. Oh, Lutz remained motionless at the doorway of that room for a period of time that felt like an eternity, but was really more like 30 seconds, his head tilted to one side like a guy trying to solve a very excellent puzzle. He lifted an eyebrow, his lips gaping in confusion. Blood had been splattered everywhere throughout the room, in some spots almost reaching the ceiling. It was spattered against all four walls and scattered in irregular circles over the floor. The closest comparison Lutz could make, Lutz heard Clarkson take a short inhale behind him, taking in the spectacle before them. Sheriff Lutz then appeared to lose all of his breath as if his lungs had collapsed. As his vision clouded and his head whirled, he had to put one hand on the hallway's exterior wall for support after feeling his knees give way. He was still holding the flashlight in one hand, flashing it into the space and onto the wet walls. More than seeing Clarkson fall backward against the wall behind him, he felt it. Billy inspected the muck on his boots as he stood at the entrance to the destroyed restroom. The younger man had already witnessed everything, Lutz realized. "Billy, when you were here earlier, did you notice any bodies?" Billy looked squarely into the sheriff's eyes. "When I noticed the blood on the steps, I thought perhaps there was still life above. However, there was nothing when I arrived up here." He pointed to the room with the bloodied walls and said, "I got the heck out of here soon as I could. The batteries in my flashlight were starting to run low. Not one of the other rooms was checked by me. So where are the bodies anyway?" "Bud McGuire and his family appear to be in a salad spinner," Clarkson asked, moving closer to the open door of the vacant room and taking another look inside. "There's blood on the goddamn ceiling." "Yes, but that is the issue. It is blood, only blood, no bones about it. No organs." Lutz's mind was still racing, trying desperately to make sense of what he had just seen. The McGuire family should have left behind parts everywhere. He turned to face the other two guys, murmuring, "But so far, the only proof of a real crime is that arm out on the road." "Yes. How did that arm even get out there?" Clarkson turned to face him, a mask of stress and dread covering his usually calm face. "Why does it appear like nobody has lived here for the past 5 years? The McGuires must be somewhere in hell." This final phrase was said by him in a shouted whisper. "Do they reside in the barn? The cellar?" Bud carried them into the woods after chopping them up. Was Bud even there? "Sheriff, what in the world were those claw marks on the door?" In a tone that did not hide his mounting dread, Clarkson continued his interrogation. In the face of his officer's mounting concern, Lutz tightened his hold on his deputy and said, "Of course it was Bud, Henry. We'll locate him." Even though it was terrifying, this notion brought a sick kind of consolation. Even though Bud McGuire had just murdered his whole family, he was still a guy. You shot a man, and he bled. Billy Hudson had remained silent the entire time, his gaze locked on the doorway to the dim restroom. Now that Billy had cleared his voice, he asked, "Sheriff, you ought to watch this, perhaps. In all of human history, have words been less welcome? What is it?" Lutz hesitantly pressed 2 fingers together to squeeze his nose. Billy only made a motion with the shotgun's head, but Lutz could see a faint line of blood slowly edging out from behind the open bathroom door in the brilliant light of his maglite. Just as his heart was starting to beat normally again, it suddenly began to jackhammer madly in his chest. In that instant, Lutz had knowledge. On the other side of that door was whatever they had come here to look for. All 3 guys had been focused on the bloody path that went to the chamber at the end of the hallway during their initial inspection. Upon closer investigation, Lutz saw that the dimly lit bathroom was emitting the tiniest hint of light. Lutz swallowed forcefully because his mouth was bone dry. He then carefully maneuvered around the bathroom doorway and leaned his back against the closest wall while keeping his weapon at the ready. When he looked around the corner and saw that it was empty, he gently made his way around the space. Billy remained outside the room again, watching over him while Clarkson covered him from behind. 2 flickering candles, the tall glass ones his grandmother used to light on Sundays, were the source of the light. 2 more candles had already perished in their own wax as the flames spat their last breaths. How much time do the candles last? Lutz tried to take in as much of the sight as he could by keeping his eyes on a swivel and making a mental note to check. The candles were placed next to a green bathtub that had some damage. They formed a tiny circle with a blackened circle in the center. Someone had mistakenly chosen to start a fire in the center of the floor. A worn-out calico garment was hanging over the bathtub's edge. Lutz walked over to the outfit, which had been placed precisely so as not to wrinkle up against the tub's edges. The actual tub was bare. Lutz stopped dead in his tracks as he heard Clarkson make a hushed swear behind him. He instantly turned on his heel and was ready to shoot after feeling a sudden sense of dread. Andrew Lutz yelled to the top of his lungs for the first time that evening. What was left of Bud McGuire was lying in a steadily increasing puddle of blood in one corner of the decrepit restroom,